the United States, the United Nations believe that there is a right to interdict maritime traffic that would be transporting goods to and from North Korea. The DPRK missile launch, and the Secretary would like to release this statement right now, and then I'd be happy to take your questions. Yes, it is. The United States strongly condemns North Korea's launch of what was likely an intercontinental ballistic missile into the Sea of Japan, indiscriminately threatening its neighbors, the region, and global stability. The DPRK's relentless pursuit of nuclear weapons and the means to deliver them must be reversed. Together, the international community must continue to send a unified message to North Korea that the DPRK must abandon its weapons of mass destruction programs. All nations must continue strong economic and diplomatic measures. In addition to implementing all existing UN sanctions, the international community must take additional measures to enhance maritime security, including the right to interdict maritime traffic transporting goods to and from the DPRK. The United States, in partnership with Canada, will now convene a meeting of the United Nations Command Sending States to include the Republic of Korea and Japan and other key affected countries to discuss how the global community can counter North Korea's threat to international peace. Diplomatic options remain viable and open for now. The United States remains committed to finding a peaceful path to denuclearization and to ending belligerent actions taken by North Korea. And with that, I'd be happy to take your questions.
So on North Korea,
Yes.
This meeting was previously going to be held, or it's been called in response to this launch?
I believe that this was an option that was being considered for some time, but yet with this latest launch, I believe that they decided that this is something they want to do. I know the Secretary spoke a short while ago with the Canadian Foreign Minister, Christina Freeland. Canada is one of the member countries of the 16 convening nations. Those were the nations that all worked together back in the 1950s. Back during the Korean War. Yeah.
And that meeting would be in New York?
I don't know. I don't have details of that. Again, a lot of this is just coming together right now as we're responding to what took place today.
Has he made any other calls that you're aware of, other than to
any other calls? I know that the Secretary has had interagency calls today. As many of you know, it was on the public schedule that the Secretary met with King Abdullah of Jordan. At that time, he was passed a note in his bilateral meeting in which he was informed of what we believe to be the ICBM launch. The most recent launch prior to this was September 15th. So the Secretary was notified then. He immediately came back to the State Department, and that's where he had some interagency calls, and since then has spoken with the Foreign Minister of Canada. I know he plans to have a discussion with other of our allies, too.
But not yet.
As of right now, I mean, literally this just happened about 2 hours ago. So first step is talking with the interagency. As that step was taking place, we were assembling this statement from the Secretary that I just read out to you. And then I know he spoke with Christina Freeland. Since then, I'm not aware of the exact calls, but I know that he was planning to call some of the allies in the region.
This is 2 missiles launch or 3 missiles?
Pardon me?
Is that 2 missile launch or 3 missiles?
As of today,
Yeah.
I think we're still working through the information, but as far as I know, there was just one, but we can double check that. Again, this information is just fresh, so I don't want to get ahead of anything that the Department of Defense has said so far. They issued a statement earlier, and for the specifics of the technicals, I would just refer you to the Department of Defense.
This issue will be bringing into UN sanctions again, or?
I don't want to get ahead of any potential UN sanctions, but I think convening this committee of nations to look at what to do next will be a significant move. Okay. Hi, Dave.
That committee just talks about maritime, the maritime.
And again, this is all fresh and this is all new. But my understanding is that there will be 2 pieces to this. One, we overall, the United States, the United Nations believe that there is a right to interdict maritime traffic that would be transporting goods to and from North Korea. That's part one. Then the United States, in partnership with Canada, which I think is why the Secretary spoke with his counterpart there today, will convene this meeting of the United Nations Command Sending States. That's the actual title of it. That includes 16 countries, in addition to Japan and North Korea. and they will have a discussion about how the overall,
South Korea.
excuse me, South Korea, thank you, have a discussion about how the global threat of North Korea persists and what all of our nations think that we need to do to try to solve the problem. Okay, hi, Dave.
So the plan before today was that there would be a period of relative calm before you allow North Korea to join talks on its own disarmament.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you haven't publicly put a time scale on that, though we have seen.
And
reports.
we wouldn't put a time frame on that. We've been very
Ambassador
clear.
was suggesting 60 days, but let's say you haven't.
I'm not aware of that, but okay.
Yeah. Regardless of how long it would have been, has the clock gone back to zero?
I don't have an answer to that. Look, I think we have always been very clear that we would be open to talks with North Korea, but that North Korea, and we would have said this last week, we would have said this 24 hours ago, is not showing any serious signs of wanting to sit down and have conversations with the world, with the global community about the peace and stability and denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. So 24 hours ago, they weren't prepared to talk. Today, they certainly aren't prepared to talk.
Has there been any attempt to open diplomatic channels since this launch today?
Since this happened, since we got notice of it 3 hours ago, not that I am aware of. I can certainly tell you that the South Korean counterpart to our ambassador, Jo Yoon, is here in Washington today. They were having a meeting at some point this afternoon. I anticipate that we will have a readout of that meeting sometime perhaps today or tomorrow. Okay?
Do you have any comment on the recently violation of North Korea armistice agreement at JSA, Panmunjom?
I'm sorry, I don't.
You don't,
I don't.
have anything comment on that? JSA, North Korean military detectors come into South Korea, so they should.
You mean the defectors?
Yeah.
The defectors who've left
Yeah.
North Korea for South Korea. That's the question that you're asking? I know with the most recent soldier who defected from North Korea, and my colleague Brian Hook wrote a very compelling editorial in the New York Times about this very matter. About the condition, the physical condition that that man was in, the number of times that he was shot at by his own government as he was defecting to South Korea, the South Koreans and the Americans who helped facilitate his survival, who essentially rescued him and brought him into the hospital. I mean, look, any country that's willing to shoot its own people for crossing its borders is a country that is not aligned with the overall global community. It is a country, or I should say a regime, that does not want to see peace if they're willing to treat its own people that way. But their record of how they treat people is long-standing, and we've seen the situation of how that soldier was treated there. Okay, that's all I have for you on that. Hey, Warren, how you been?
About earlier this month, there was the chairwoman of the South Korean ruling party was here in Washington, and she was saying that that she doesn't think the North Koreans are willing to talk until after they've achieved their goal of having a weapon that could reach the United States, and also the North Koreans have said that they're willing to talk. They've said in the past that they would talk to the Americans, but not about their nuclear program. So, where does that leave?
We have.
Is there like a middle ground, or is there a position somehow at all acceptable to the United States?
I think today is the wrong day to ask. When they launch what we believe to be an intercontinental ballistic missile, they are not showing that they are serious about having conversations. Our ultimate goal is to denuclearize the Korean Peninsula. That has not changed. Part of what we say in that goal is that we want to support our strong allies, Japan, our allies in the Republic of Korea. It is an ironclad relationship that we have with them. I imagine today that they are understandably nervous. We've had a period of relative calm, if you would call it that, since September 15th, since the last testing. But nevertheless, that is a huge concern. And it's a concern that not just the United States shares, but the entire world shares, the civilized world shares. And I'll go back to saying this one more time again, with the two unanimous UN Security Council resolutions, which all the nations signed on, including China and Russia onto those two new UN Security Council resolutions. Then we've had success with other countries jumping on board and choosing to assist us with our maximum pressure campaign. It is a disappointment in what we saw today in terms of this testing that was conducted. That is a disappointment, but diplomacy still remains our option. We will have conversations with our allies and partners where to go from here. Okay, and I'm not going to have a lot more for you all on this related to DPRK. Hi, Andrea.
Hi. Another subject when you're ready.
Sure. Okay. Hold on, just 1 second. You want to last one? Hi.
Yes.
Good to see you.
Can you tell us more about this meeting that the U.S. will be convening with Canada? When is it going to take place, and then what are you hoping to achieve from it?
So, again, this is all new, okay? So we don't have a date that's scheduled for that. As soon as we're able to put this on the calendar, as you can imagine, it's a pretty big feat to gather 16 countries together, plus South Korea and also Japan. But that is a meeting that we will plan to pull together. Where exactly it will take place, I just don't know. But we'll talk about the next steps forward, what we need to do, what all of us need to do in light of DPRK's continued destabilizing activities.
Of sometime this week, or is this more of a
again, I do not know. This is just being pulled together. As soon as I have information and a meeting to announce for you, I'll certainly bring it to you. Okay? Arsha,
North
yeah.
Korea, we have out of New York diplomats saying that the United States is requesting a UN Security Council meeting on North Korea. Is that correct?
I would have to check with Ambassador Nikki Haley's office on that. I just don't want to get ahead of anything that they may be announcing. I don't want to speak on her behalf. But if I get anything for you before we end, we'll certainly bring that to you.